Hello and welcome to Square Raindrop. I'm Jo Wheeler.
And I'm Steff Golter.
And I've got so much to remember today, I nearly forgot what we were called. So a couple of weeks back, we started thinking that we would look at geoengineering, or cloud seeding as it's known. And since then, I'm sure the internet was listening because I have just seen so much about it in the news, not least of all, of course, in relation to Dubai. So let's just give me some ideas, Steff, because it's your part of the world. What happened in Dubai?
Well, it was my old stomping ground. So I lived in Doha for many years. Of course, Dubai is just a stone's throw away. And generally, these places are deserts. But every now and then you get some rain. And for Dubai recently, they had a whole load of rain. They had 142 millimetres in 24 hours. And to give you an idea, they usually get about 94 millimetres in an entire year. So it's about a year and a half's rain they got in one day. So of course that caused major problems. Now they knew it was coming. They shut the schools. People were told to homeschool. Some of the offices were shut as well. So they knew it was coming. It was well forecast, but still, if you're going to get a year and a half's worth of rain in one day, it will cause flooding. And that's exactly what we saw.
The pictures were really quite extraordinary. Those planes landing in what appeared to be a lake and the cars floating down the roads. I mean, that genuinely was a flood of biblical proportions.
Absolutely. And one of the problems in that part of the world is they're not used to that much rain. It doesn't happen regularly. And so the drains just can't cope when it does.
And of course, that lent some credibility or drive to the rumours that this might be down to geoengineering, which for the average person is what they call cloud seeding. Tell us what cloud seeding is to begin with.
Cloud seeding is something the idea has been around for about 100 years. The idea is you can throw some particles into the air and somehow make it rain. Now, obviously, you need some stuff to be there in order to make it rain. So you need moisture up there. You also you need the right conditions. If there's an area of high pressure sitting on you that suppresses any sort of shower or any cloud development, you're not going to make anything rain. It just can't happen. But if you have the right conditions, you can throw particles into clouds and enhance those clouds and make the rain heavier.
And why would you want to do that?
Some parts of the world, including the UAE, are very, very dry and they could do with a bit more rain. The UAE do use it. They have admitted that they use it and they're quite public about it. They use it to try and refill the aquifers that they have. It's also used in the States. And China and Australia have admitted that they've tried it, but it didn't work for them. So there's actually quite a few places that do use it.
So explain why this couldn't have happened in Dubai. Could this not have been, a geoengineering experiment that went wrong?
Well, no, in this particular instant, it couldn't, because what the setup is too obvious at the moment. So we have El Nino with us. We've also got the Indian Ocean dipole, which is setting up. That's like El Nino, but in the Indian Ocean. These two things have really enhanced the jet stream over there. And as we know in the UK, when a jet stream is over you and it's a strong jet stream, then we often get a succession of storms heading over us. And some of those can bring some very severe weather. So that's what's happened, but over in the Gulf region. So we've seen one storm after another recently, and this one was particularly powerful. Now, we knew it was coming. About 5 or 6 days in advance, there were signs that something very heavy was heading towards that part of the world, and there would be an awful lot of heavy rain. So it was well forecast. We knew it was coming. They would have been mad to try and cloud seed that. For a start, they cloud seed from planes over there. You can't fly in that. So that wouldn't happen. So the rain was coming. The models knew that it was going to give us a lot of rain. They gave us estimates about what we saw out of the clouds. So the chances of it being from geoengineering are almost zero.
Well, of course, it's not just us that are discussing it. You were asked yesterday on Talk TV.
Welcome back. The University of Reading has denied that its cloud seeding technology could have caused the devastating floods in the United Arab Emirates. Earlier this week, the country experienced more than a year and a half's worth of rainfall in just one day, with floods submerging the usually dry UAE. A meteorologist says several cloud seeding aircraft were flown in the days before the unprecedented rainfall hit. But Reading Uni says it couldn't have caused that much devastation. Joining us live to explain more, meteorologist Steff and Angela Terry, who's an environmental scientist. So why don't we start with Steff on this one? And thank you both very much for joining me. Cloud seeding, obviously something, a concept, an activity with which you two are inordinately familiar, and many of the rest of us have never even heard of it, to my shame. When I read about it today for the very first time, my ignorance was beyond all imagining. So can you start, Steff, by telling us what cloud seeding is, how you do it, what Reading University's got to do with the UAE anyway, and why cloud seeding takes place. So then at least we know what we're talking about.
So weather modification, as it's called, is something that's happened for about 100 years. And basically, we can tinker. We can do little things, but not massive things. So you're never going to be able to get a hurricane to go whiz over another country that perhaps you don't like politically. You just can't do it. What you could do is maybe clear some fog. So you throw extra particles in, so the little bits of moisture have more to cling onto. They gradually disperse the fog, and then you suddenly have takeoff conditions because the runway has cleared or something like that. So we do little things. We can also throw, it's usually silver iodide, but particles up into the clouds. And the idea is it enhances the clouds. More of the moisture can condense and form clouds and form rain. The thing is, you can't cause something out of nothing. So if you throw it up into a high pressure or where there's no moisture, nothing will happen. Equally, you can't really make a storm like we saw in Dubai. It's a massive storm that came through. Anything that was in the atmosphere before that storm came would have been pushed out of the way by that storm system. We know across the UK, when you get a jet stream that's stuck, you have a progression of storms that come straight over the top. And that's what's happened in Dubai. So because of El Nino, because of the Indian Ocean dipole, which is like El Nino in the Indian Ocean, because of these conditions, we have a very strong jet stream over the region at the moment. And that has caused a succession of storms. So for Dubai, it was well forecast days in advance that this storm was coming. They would have been mad to try and cloud seed it because it was such an intense storm. And also, you shouldn't really fly in those conditions either.
Angela Terry, your take on this, because Reading Uni is getting it in the neck, isn't it? People are saying, oh, it's all Reading's fault. I don't know why it's Reading in particular. Are they at the vanguard of cloud seeding? Is that why?
I think what's happening here is that there's a desire from a lot of organisations who profit from oil and gas companies to push blame whenever anything goes wrong onto someone other than them. So we know that the world is warming because we're burning more oil and gas. So when there is climate change, the atmosphere can hold more water. So for every 1 degree of extra warming, we get 7% more moisture is able to be held in the atmosphere. And we know from our experience here in the UK how wet it's been. It's been record-breaking this year. The last 18 months here have been wetter than all records. And last year was the world's warmest, and this year's looking to be even warmer still. So what we're seeing is extremes. So the rainfall in Dubai in the last 24 hours was more than double what they normally would see in a year. So these records are being broken all around the world. Nowhere is safe from it. Obviously, the Middle East is such a big oil and gas producing area. And so what we've got to do is to reduce the amount of extreme weather we're having all the time is to transition to clean energy. So that really is my take on it. There will always be conspiracy theories. And the question you always have to ask is, why would someone say this when we've had someone as good as Steff come on and explain why it can't be, the conspiracy theories, Reading University, whoever they want to blame currently, it's why would they want to do that? And it's to push away Scientists have warned for decades about climate change and the effect it would have on us. Now we're seeing it with our own eyes. It's costing us a fortune. There's fields with farmers not being able to grow food. We've had loads of homes flooded. We're seeing it with our own eyes, and we have to start transitioning to clean energy as fast as possible.
And explain what we as individuals can do.
So as individuals, the main things we can do is around how we get around, how we heat and power our home, and the sort of diet we have. So what my organisation One Home says is raise your voice, cut your carbon. So obviously we've got elections coming up, so making sure you are registered to vote and that you bring your photo ID with you is really probably the most important one, voting for politicians who want to safeguard our future. And then reducing our own carbon footprint is by transitioning, using your car less, having electric cars, eating less meat, and insulating your home. And the reason insulating your home is so important is our energy bills have gone through the roof recently because of the war in Ukraine. So the less gas we use, the lower our energy bills will be. So it's like putting a winter coat on. And the other good thing about insulating your home is that we're predicted a record heat wave this summer. And so the more your home is insulated, the more barrier there is from the extreme temperatures we're having. So it'll help your house be cooler as well in the summer. So there's lots of things we can do, but it's simple things like walking for short journeys and switching off appliances when you don't need them. Even simple things like if you want to switch food from your microwave to your oven, that will all save energy and reduce your electricity bill. But the more we use solar and wind, the better. And the good news is it's been so windy and sunny in the UK. We're breaking all records at the moment in our national grid in terms of lowering the carbon in our electricity. So there's been some really good progress recently, and it's really worth celebrating them so that when people see these devastating pictures, both in the UK and around the world, they don't give up hope. There is still everything to play for. The less pollution we put into the atmosphere, the less warming we will see. So everyone doing their bit is so important, but getting the right policies is essential.
Let me bring Steff back into the conversation. Steff, there will be people watching, listening, thinking, they keep saying, that the weather is more extreme. They keep saying it's going to be an absolute heat wave this summer. But we remember very clearly, for example, this is just before my time, but, the freezing cold winter of, I think it was 1961. But what I do remember very clearly is the long hot summer of 1976, where we had stand pumps in the towns. We had, we were advised to have a bath with a stranger. Those were the days. Have a good laugh. We had a minister for drought, Dennis Howell, I remember, and when it finally rained, everybody thanked him very much and congratulated him. I mean, they were very extreme times. My grandma Sybil said it was the end of the world. She said they'd never had, weather like this in Great Britain, and they were never going to have it again. This denoted some kind of catastrophe. So some people will say we've had extreme weather forever. We always get it. We've had it for, every other year there's something to remark upon. What's new about this weather? Is it really any kind of big deal, or is it being oversold?
Well, you're right, Vanessa. The weather has always changed, because if there wasn't a massive change in the weather, I probably wouldn't have a job. But the change at the moment is that there's more and more extremes being reached. So even if you're a conspiracy theorist, you can no longer deny that everywhere is reporting higher temperatures, everywhere is reporting more extreme weather, whether it's droughts or floods. So there's definitely a change. 1976 was an example, but it's the one example that we really remember, whereas everywhere now is beginning to see different things, more extreme temperatures, more extreme weather. So the difference really is the frequency that it's happening, and it's happening everywhere.
Okay, well, I think we all accept that what happened in Dubai was not geoengineering, was not cloud seeding. But, this is all rather cloaked in mystery. And given the fact we've had the wettest year or 18 months known to mankind, and our skies are perpetually grey, there's obviously a lot of concern that we're seeing geoengineering going on here. Now, does it happen here?
Well, it has happened here. We have tinkered with the weather a little bit. In the military, they like to use it to clear fog. So if they're in a war zone and they need to get out of there, whatever, they can throw particles into fog, which causes it to disperse. Because if you throw too many particles, too many places for the water to condense onto, then it makes the fog thinner, and then you can see enough to take off. So that's great. It's usually used to make rain in orographic areas. So if there's a hill, then you can put extra particles in if the conditions are right and enhance the rain that falls. The studies say basically it enhances the rain by about 10 to 15%. So if you throw particles up when a rain cloud is coming, then it can, if the conditions are right, give you 15% more rain.
Now, back in 1952, was it? It was believed that we were experimenting with cloud seeding immediately before the Devon floods that killed 35 people. And this was reported at the time to be as a result of cloud seeding. But then just recently I found a BBC article that said, no, it wasn't. Have you got any clarity on that?
I believe that RAF logbooks were looked at and personnel were talked to, and they admitted that they had been cloud seeding in the area at the time. Obviously, I am not in the RAF. I have not seen the logbook, so I can't definitely say yes or no, but it could be. It's entirely possible.
Now, there are an awful lot of people around at the moment who think that we are seeing chemtrails in the sky. Chemtrails against contrails. I think the important thing is to understand the difference between those before we start. So again, Steffi, define them.
So a contrail is the little streaks of cloud you see behind aeroplanes if they're flying over you. You don't always see them, but if the conditions are right, you often see the little white lines across the sky. Chemtrails would be something chemical put in the contrails in order to make more cloud. Now, the issue I have with that is that's not how particles are thrown up into the cloud in the first place. So they can either be shot from rockets, it's normally silver iodide, shot from rockets or from aeroplanes that are flying. But just a quick Google on the internet and you can see that they have rockets on the edge of the planes, on the edge of the plane's wings. It's those that would put the silver iodide into the cloud, not out of the exhaust of the plane. The exhaust from the plane are just particles of exhaust, like you might see in a car, something that's similar to that. It's the fact that it's particles in supercooled water that cause the contrails. You could throw anything up there, like tiny bits of dust from the desert or salt that's spraying off the sea, and they would do the same thing because the conditions are right for those clouds to form up there. But the only thing is there's nothing for them to condense onto. So ice in your freezer will turn to ice at 0. Ice in the air where there's nothing for them to condense onto can stay as water vapor until it's -40. So they're just there, primed, ready to go, but they have nothing to condense onto. Shove a plane up there, throw some sand, whatever it is you want to throw up there, you will get clouds.
I have to confess here to having a bit of a history with the aviation industry. I did work for the airlines for a while, not just flying around having a nice time, although that might have been part of it. But no, I was writing the flight manuals. So I have a wee bit of knowledge. But when you see a contrail, it's at altitude. It's at like 38,000 feet. And when you don't see it, it's because the temperature is not quite right or the humidity is not quite right. What people are observing at the moment, which they say are chemtrails, are planes flying to around 12 to 13,000 feet. And of the pictures that I've seen, certainly, I'll find some to put up. It doesn't appear to be the exhaust out of the plane. It does appear to be coming from the wings. Hard to see, obviously, at that kind of distance. You see, here in Steff, yeah, you're the absolute science one, and I must admit, I'm all embracing of some of these theories. Not least of all because going back to that 1952 flood, yes, they were cloud seeding. No, they weren't. Or maybe that's just the way it was reported. And you're thinking, well, what did happen then? Was it an experiment that went wrong? I know that there are many, many patents for weather modification, on the patent statute or whatever you call it. So this isn't the first time people have tried to mess around. And there's far more of it than we believe. Looking at the Daily Telegraph supplement, which you can't read online these days, apparently all Chinese cities have a cloud seeding plan. Between June and November 2022, precipitated 8.56 billion metric tons of additional rainfall in the Yangtze River Basin. Well, that's a huge amount. You know, when you're saying that we can't cloud seed in Dubai to create that kind of a storm, they've managed to do 8.56 billion metric tons.
It is an extraordinary amount of water, but it happened over 2 years, and China's pretty massive. So exactly how much that transmitted into rain in 24 hours, I can't say. What I can say is in Australia, when they tried it in the tropical region in the north, they found it didn't work for them, because when you put it into convective clouds, so the fluffy cumulus type clouds, it's really difficult to say what would have happened and what wouldn't. And these things are really, really expensive. So you're not going to do it unless you have definitive proof that it works. So when it's used most is during orographic region, so in mountains. So maybe the air is coming in from the Pacific over North America. Then it is seen to be cloud seeded over some of the mountains there. Also between Dubai and Oman, that's where they also cloud seed, because there are mountains there, so they can feed the clouds and get a little bit more rain from them. So that's when you can prove that there's a positive benefit from the cloud seeding. It's really difficult to tell in convective situations.
Well, as well as China, the US, some of the US states have begun cloud seeding. They started that about 20 years ago. Australia, as you said, had a bit of a dim go at it, and it didn't work very well. In India, cloud seeding technology is used to clean toxic smog from New Delhi. And in both France and Canada, similar sort of processes are used to stop hail, right? So my question is, right, what is happening here? Because we're claiming that we're not doing it, haven't done it. It's not to account for all this grey skies that we've seen just recently. And yet planes are flying, and they are appearing to spray something or to be emptying something out of the back of the plane. And what are we doing?
Well, I phoned one of the companies that's mentioned online, 2XL Aviation. A lot of people on Twitter are saying it's them. You see their planes flying. We know they do it. Now, what they actually do is they spray when there's an oil spill. So they help environmental disasters. That is what they spray for. And to do that, they would have to be at 150 feet, no higher. But people say they see their planes because they're spraying the sea for an oil spill. But people say they see their planes flying around, and they are the planes that are specially adapted to spray. That is true. But as you would know, as somebody that worked in the aviation industry, and I certainly know just from my lawnmower, if you leave something and don't touch it ever, then it won't work when you need it to. So they have to maintain the planes, check the pilots know how to fly them and all the rest. So you do see them moving around, but they're not spraying, because spraying is expensive. And unless someone's paying them to do it, they're not going to do it. So they're waiting for the oil spill.
Do you know something? Then there is going to be a part 2 to this, Steph, because I know we've both got completely mired down in it. I'm going to leave it on this question, right? If you can create rain clouds, can you take them away? Because again, in the press, there's stories of people like Paul McCartney and Paris Hilton having paid around £100,000 to have clouds removed for an event that they've got on.
It would be possible, theoretically, to do that, because that's what they do with fog dispersion. So if you throw excessive amounts of particles into the fog or into a cloud, there's more places for each bit of rain to condense onto. And therefore it thins it, because you don't have the big droplets, you have just lots of tiny ones, and then you can see through it enough to take off, or maybe enough to stop hail and prevent the hail from forming, or maybe to disperse cloud. I haven't seen any reports of people paying at concerts to make sure their concerts are sunny. That would be amazing if it was true. Can they do the same for my garden?
Probably not. I wouldn't have thought so. And, last thoughts, for this particular edition, and we will come back to this because I think there is a lot more to be found out and a lot more to be said. And so, yeah, we're going to keep our heads down, find out what we can. If we have the capability to modify the weather for better or for worse, gosh, it's like we're getting married. Why don't we? You know, why have we suffered all this rain and all this cloud? If we have the ability to change it in any way, when farmers are looking like they're going to lose their crops this year, why haven't we done something about it?
Because we can only tinker. I think that's the takeaway from this. So they have tried with a massive hurricane to change it. They thought if they threw particles up into the air, then they would be able to stop the hurricane and kill it. But actually, there's so much ice in the hurricane anyway that the silver iodide didn't do anything, because they've already got lots of particles there. So it didn't help. The hurricane still continued. There was no change. So there's lots of things that they've tried with big things, but they don't work. So if you get a jet stream heading across the Atlantic to us, it's really powerful. It's going to bring storm systems and they're going to intensify, and there's nothing you can do about it. But if you have a bit of benign cloud, a bit of fog, oh yeah, then we can do something.
Well, you have, of course, just admitted what I've always thought. You are, in fact, a little tinker. No, one of the reasons for doing this in two parts, not least of all because there was stuff about this that we both knew, certainly found out a lot over the past couple of weeks or so, and I think there's a lot more to find out and to pin down, but also an opportunity for anybody watching this to ask questions of us. You know, leave it in the comments below or email us or go to the website, whatever you want to do, and we will try and answer your questions, which is what we set out to do in the first place anyway, because suddenly this blew out of nowhere, and then Dubai blew out of nowhere as well. So to contact us, Steffi, it is
at Raindrop, that's on Twitter or X, and that's because Square Raindrop didn't fit. Or you can email us at weather@squareraindrop.com.